Just wanted to make a couple of quick announcements before we get into the actual topic of the video for today. So firstly, I am actively looking for other jiu-jitsu competitors, jiu-jitsu coaches who have a message that they really want to share and want to come chill on a podcast together where I'll interview you, we'll elicit a lot of awesome topics, we'll have a good time, we'll have a nice chat, and it's something that you can share with your students or you can share with any of your teammates, just to kind of have a good time and put your message out there to more people. Another announcement is I officially started Patreon. On the Patreon, I'm going to be documenting some of the things that I'm doing in my jiu-jitsu game, some of the things that I'm researching on, and as well as some of the workouts that I'm doing to help improve my flexibility, improve my strength, manage my injuries, as well as also what foods I'm eating, how I can use, how I eat for performance, but also have some fun as well, and going over like the major concepts of that, as well as also going to be sharing the Grappler's Edge Part 1 and Part 2, the Strength and Performance Guide, the Nutrition Guide, that is your key to self-programming. So all the information is going to be there. If you want to go ahead and check that out and support me, it would be very helpful and much appreciated. We hope to continue growing the podcast, continue to move the sport forward as much as possible, and to try to just keep as much positivity going in the community. So anything like that, whether it's hopping on the podcast, liking, commenting, sharing with a friend, those things are very, very important and very helpful and much appreciated. But as you saw with the video title, we're going to go ahead and talk about white belt and blue belt competitions and what our mindset can be now, as I am two-stripe blue, have been competing for quite some time and have been really getting into advanced parts of my game and really putting things together that I've been working on for years. So we're also going to be having some guests coming up that's going to be sharing some more about the topic, and I think that this will help us just move forward in a much more positive attitude when it comes to competition, make it a lot less stressful, make it more fun, have it be a good time, have it be a positive experience, not something that like demoralizes us or something that adds more stress onto your life when it's not necessary. So I hope you guys enjoy and see you on the other side. So I haven't really done a podcast in a while. I actually haven't been making too many videos recently, but we're coming back again strong. And, there's always that hesitation, there's always that nervousness when we're trying to get back into doing something or trying to do something new. I want to really take the podcast into a different approach and into a different path. And I want it to be higher quality and I want it to be better. And I want it to be something that can help just spread more positivity around the community and to just help the community move forward. That's my main missions. And, whenever we're trying to do something that's like scary, and for me, it's always the potential of negative feedback from people or feeling like I'm wasting my time, we can continue to make these excuses and rationalities in our head to prevent us from actually doing something that's going to move our life forward. And that's going to be a very important thing to discuss for today's video, which is about competing. And this is something that I've been doing a lot more of recently. I've been really putting a lot of time into my jiu-jitsu game. I've been really spending a lot of time studying, training, competing, and I just want to kind of share some of the experiences that I've been going through over the past few months and kind of where I've been at, in hopes that it could potentially inspire you or help you feel motivated to improve your game. And the topic mainly is going to be about, for us beginners competing, what is the best way to approach it? It comes from, and where my thinking and rationale comes from in this topic is just from years of personal training and years of coaching people, years of being really into like the human psychology and the way that the brain thinks and the way that we operate as a society. These are all things that are very interesting to me. I'm much a people watcher. I like to kind of observe what's going on. I'm really big into like meditation and observing what's going on in my mind, and paying attention as time goes on to what some of the changes that I go through, and the differences, and how life is when we focus our attention on certain things. And so in the relation to what making this video, it's like there are sometimes things that can feel scary to us, or that fill us with anxiety or stress or nervousness or whatever those feelings are. And sometimes we have to just be able to push through. And where I say that is because I believe that there is a lot of people who love jiu-jitsu, who love spending time with jiu-jitsu, love doing jiu-jitsu, but limit themselves in actually competing and not actually getting out there on the competition mat. Like, maybe you can watch, maybe you can support other people, but you won't actually go out there and do it yourself. If it's something that is scary to you, my question would be why? Whenever something is stopping you from doing something, you always got to ask yourself why. What is the insecurity that's stopping you? What is it that you're lacking confidence in that is like causing you to be nervous and not excited? Because there's actually being excited and being nervous, they're kind of like the same thing, right? Like, if you talk about like someone being nervous, they might be like, their palms are sweating, maybe their heart rate is up. If someone's excited, maybe their palms are sweaty and their heart rate is up. Like, there's a lot of correlations between the two. And so I think it's an important thing to kind of turn that nervousness into some form of excitement, and to kind of recognize that we all kind of have this little like hesitation. Now, some people may not have the hesitation. Some people might be able to compete no problem at all, but there might be other areas of your life that you are facing these challenges with. So that's where it comes in. But there's definitely, where the message really is for those people that are a little bit more frightened to like actually compete. Like, people that maybe you just got your blue belt and you're like, okay, I'm facing this new bracket, like I'm facing a new tournament angle. I'm going to be facing new challenges, right? Maybe you're a 2-stripe white belt. You've been training for 6 months. You know some people that have been competing, and it's time for you to step up and start competing yourself. And there's a lot of hesitation with that. Like, there's a lot of nervousness. It's like, what do I do? What do I do? Now, you got to ask yourself where the insecurity is coming from. Are you scared to lose? And I want to talk about this for a little bit. Like, I want to talk about how, like, losing can be one of the most beneficial things, and literally losing at a white belt, blue belt, like, local tournament literally doesn't matter. Like, I used to be subject to, I remember when I was first getting into doing jiu-jitsu tournaments, like, oh my God, like, I really want to win and get the first place and like make this highlight reel for Instagram. Let me tell you, that's fine and that's great if that's what you want to do. If you want to win first place and you want to put together banger Instagram highlight videos, I say go for it. All right, I want to do that. It's cool. It's fun. It's like you get to share what you've been working on. It's like your creativeness. It's like an art form, so you want to share it and you want to see like, hey, this is what I've been working on and it's working, and it's effective against other people, right? But what I will say is at the white and blue belt level, nobody cares. It doesn't matter. You could lose every single tournament. As a white belt, as a blue belt, you could lose every single match. What really matters is when you start getting to like purple, brown, black, and maybe you start doing more like maybe super fights that could potentially put your name out there in the community. Maybe you're doing tournaments where locally people can see the traction going, and you can definitely get some traction going as a white and blue. But would you rather, and I'm not saying that it needs to be this way, but would you rather win white belt and blue belt and then lose purple and brown? Or would you rather lose white and blue and then win purple brown? Well, okay, you may be thinking, well, how can somebody who's like winning white and blue not win purple brown? Well, it depends. You have to think there's a whole area of technique that gets unlocked at purple and brown, right? Or black belt too. You start seeing more like heel hooks. You start seeing more leg locks. You start seeing more like advanced game. And it's going to be really critical as far as like what your decisions are, as far as what techniques that you're employing, that's actually going to like work against an opponent. So when you're thinking about your progression of jiu-jitsu and you're thinking about like how to structure your training so you can feel like confident in competition, that comes with a sense of preparedness, right? So you would want to know what your game is going to be. What are you actually going to like go out there and do? Now, some of you may have the attitude of, oh, I'm just going to go out there and do a thing. Okay, well, that's great. And if you get results with that, that's great. What I am saying is that for the long term, for your long-term development and for like most people, like especially, if you're like some special talented, if things just click for you and you're athletic and you just go out there and you crush the competition, then hey, awesome, that works. But I'm saying for us regular people, no, we're not talented, we're not like overly athletic or anything like that. We just want to get better, right? We think about the long term and we think about, well, what can we do against highest level opponents? What are some of the reactions that are happening at that level? And this is why we would watch tape. This is why we would study matches. This is why we would this is why we get the Flow membership, right? Like the Flow grappling membership. That's like everyone complains about the annual price. Hey, I got it because I know that I'm going to see a lot of higher level jiu-jitsu, and that's going to help me get better. And that's something that is worth the money to me. So that's why I do it. But to continue with it, it's like I constantly think about the long term, and what I really care about the most as far as like my goals and as far as like what I want to accomplish in the sport. Firstly, I care more about being a coach and an instructor. I think that jiu-jitsu is a lot of fun. I think that jiu-jitsu has brought me a lot of positivity. I think it brings a lot of positivity to other people. I think it brings a big sense of community to people, and it's something that I would love to lead in. It really is something that I would want to do. But I do recognize that in order for me to challenge my technique and to be able to become a master, I need to test it against as much resistance opponent as I possibly could. If someone is resisting 100% and I can pull moves off, then I know that the technique that I'm showing will actively work against resistance. And this is important. At least it's important to me. When we're trying to build out our game, we have to think about and consider that long term. What can we do to build that long term? And for instance, like the heel hook game is obviously something that's big. And I started learning heel hooks at like 3-stripe white belt when I started training with Deagle. When we were training, he did heel hooks with us. He did all that modern day jiu-jitsu, that Danaher stuff. That was all the good stuff that we learned. Just getting into that heel hook game. But here I am competing at white belt and blue belt, and the heel hooks aren't even a thing. I can't even do heel hooks. I can't even do it as part of the rule. So all that training and all that drilling for the heel hooks, they have absolutely no usefulness towards the competitions that I'm doing now. Yes, I can enter into leg entanglements. I can create sweeps off leg entanglements. There are parts of it that are helpful, but as far as actually getting to the heel hook, which is probably the best submission move, you can't do that. But I still continue to do the heel hook stuff because I know that long term it's going to be for my best interest. But for now, I will, on a lower level experiment with other things and focus more on my top game and try to focus more on like passing and such until I get to that level of which the heel hook becomes something that I can actually do in a competition, and then it will be useful. It will be something that I will be applying on a regular basis, and I'll be glad that I put in the hours now. The thing is that if you're winning like first place medals you could win white belt and blue belt just off of pure aggression and pure strength. You can just like rip yourself out of submissions because at this level, even if we understand or intellectually understand and we have the knowledge of certain things, we just don't have the same amount of mat time as we're going to have in another like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to have the proficiency of the technique that we know, right? We can know it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can act it out towards resistance yet. And so that is ultimately the game. So the problem with just like going out there and being an absolute savage and just winning first place all the time in white and blue is that you don't really experiment with your technique and you don't really put together and formulate like an actual game plan that you can build off of in the long term, right? Because then eventually what happens is you get to a purple belt, and then at that point, the person's been training a lot longer and they're a little bit more refined in what they want to do, and now their technique is working against aggression. And that's when you start to see aggression and athleticism start to become less of a component, as technique is more of an opponent. That doesn't necessarily mean that athleticism, performance, and all that doesn't matter, but what it does show you is that at the higher level, the most important thing is your technique. So if you can go out there at the white and blue belt level and start to experiment and start to use different moves and techniques that you're working on in the gym, that you're trying to do with your coach, maybe some things that you learned on a seminar or online, and you're trying to formulate a game, well then, long term, you're going to be able to base your training off of something. Okay, you're going to notice, okay, well eventually you're going to wind up losing, and then what you can do is you can go back to your losses and make corrections and start to build yourself a more successful game. Obviously, winning at a high level isn't easy. In fact, it's probably really difficult, because what's interesting about jiu-jitsu is that you don't really see a lot of people like absolutely owning all the time, 24/7, except for really like Gordon Ryan and maybe like a handful of other people in our lifetime, like literally a handful. Most of the time, it's anybody could tap anybody. Anybody could tap anybody. Literally anybody can tap anybody, right? Like anything can happen out there, no matter how good technique is, no matter how much athleticism. You put together two people that are freaking really good and they put a lot of time and effort into their training. Anything can happen, right? So the only thing that you can do is to try to improve your chances of success and to be able to at least show that you have proficiency. And when you do that, I think that then helps not only the enjoyment of jiu-jitsu and helps it make more fun and helps you actually like learn it better and improve yourself better, but I think it also becomes easier to articulate and teach to other people, especially if that's a goal of yours. Like if you want to teach, if you want to coach eventually, well then knowing what you're doing on like a being able to write it down level, then you'll be able to share it with other people much easier. And when you share it with other people, that usually helps your refinement as well. And these are all good things in improving your game. And I think that that's why it's really important to just put yourself out there at that level with the mindset of, let's test techniques, let's go hard, let's do the best I can, let's try to win. But if I don't win, I'm not gonna like let it ruin me, or I'm not gonna let it discourage me from competing again, when in reality it doesn't matter. It's funny because here at the white belt, blue belt level, I actually haven't won first place yet. I've won a bunch of second place, one third place, and I've had like a couple tournaments, like my first one and one that I did like several months ago, my first like advanced class. I wound up like losing every match, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm bad at jiu-jitsu. It's just that on that particular day, the performance wasn't there, and I went back and I looked at, well, what is it that I should have done differently? What could I have done to improve the positions that I was getting into? Because I'm always constantly getting into positions that I'm working on, and then it's a matter of getting there and then thinking, okay, well then what is next? And being able to refine that so much to where when you're in a match, there is no panic, there is no disorganization, there is no dysfunction, there is no getting frustrated, because you know exactly where you need to go. If I occur through this problem, then I'm going to solve it with this. And the more that you put your brain into that attitude, and the more that you compete and you continuously try to progress in that fashion, well then over time, you're going to establish a game for yourself. And now when you're at the brown belt level and you need to start really putting it on people, you have the proficiency of the techniques that you've been drilling since a beginner, and you've just been continuously adding to that system to the point of which eventually you will get your first place. You will be able to showcase your skills, and you will be able to use that as a form of you could potentially use that as a form of helping improve your state of coaching and what you want to accomplish with that. Or maybe it's just exposure, or maybe you're trying to get sponsorships, or maybe you're not really trying to do anything. Maybe you just want to win to win. Maybe you just want to eventually win to win. The more you build out a strategic game for yourself, the more you can build on it, and the higher chance that you have of winning something that actually really matters. And I think that that's what's most important, is that when it comes time to, as we said before, I went on a little bit of a tangent, but as far as my goal, I really want to get into ADCC. That's a huge goal of mine. Obviously, that's not going to happen anytime soon, but I know that in years to come, it is definitely possible. And part of that, of course, comes with the wrestling game and the top game. And, anybody that's watched my matches know that I pull guard all the time. I'm always pulling guard. And there's always people in the gym or whatever online that are always like giving me shit for pulling guard. Oh, you can't wrestle. Oh, like wrestling is important for jiu-jitsu, self-defense, blah, blah, blah. It's not that I don't wrestle. I actually will wrestle like once a week. I drill it occasionally. It is something that I do pay at least some attention to. But it's not the forefront of my game because it takes so long to develop where I don't actually need it right now. And what I'm focused on right now is just building out my open guard game and perfecting my guard game and working on those things instead and focusing the game on where I want it to be. If my opponent's a wrestler, I'm going to shut down his whole entire wrestling game because I'm not standing with him. So all those takedowns that my opponent did, that doesn't really matter because I pulled guard. And now I'm improving my guard. And then if they pull guard, well, then that's fine because I get to work my passing. Once I have that down, then it's going to be easier to add in, okay, well, now I'm going to start wrestling 3-4 times a week, and I'm going to start really making it a standpoint for getting ready for, let's say, like ADCC trials. Well, now I can add that in. So that's kind of like part of the short-term, long-term development, at least in the way that I'm thinking and the way that I want to kind of like formulate it out. So, yeah, so I just think it's important for us to just get out there, compete, try to improve the best we can, ask questions, stay as positive as we can with each other, and we just try to all move together, move forward together, right? So I think that's going to be it for this podcast today. My next few podcasts will have some guests, so I'm excited for that because it's usually much more easier to have the conversation when you're not just by yourself. So I hope you guys do enjoy, guys. Links down below to join the Patreon, get private access to the courses and videos. You guys can like and comment and subscribe. It would mean a lot. So hope you found the video enjoyable and tune in next time.